So the question is, you've got team members who are getting offers for higher pay. You've got team members who are leaving for higher pay in other organizations. And the question is, what can you do to help retain these people um, and not lose them just because of potentially a few extra dollars an hour? So the approach to leadership that we're taking here, that you're developing more and more, is in and of itself very helpful. So there is pretty good research on this that if employees are engaged, if they feel like their manager truly cares about them and they're growing, they're finding meaning in their work, essentially, these 14 needs that we always talk about, if these needs are being met, it's really hard to pull somebody away. In fact, I think Gallup has quantified this to some degree. For an employee who is fully engaged, I think it's something like they need to be offered something along the lines of 40 or 50% more than what they're making currently to pull them away. So the more that you're developing these skills as managers that are helping people meet really important needs, that in and of itself is going to help. It can also help if you communicate these things, and it's better that you don't just tell people, because then it's going to fall on deaf ears, right? If you're saying, hey, you shouldn't leave because here's all the benefits of working with us, um, it's probably not going to go that well. But if you have an understanding of the benefits of working for you versus some of the competitors that these people are leaving for, then what you can do is you can ask guiding questions as a coach that helps people come to that realization for themselves. So you can ask questions like, well, what are the most important things to you about your work environment? Listen to their answers, ask follow-up questions to clarify. And you really get understanding. And if you get people talking, the first thing people always say without thinking about it is they'll say, well, I just want to make more money. But if you ask the right questions, you can help people realize it's actually money's very low on the list when you get people to really think about it. Most of the surveys I've seen, it's like number 7 of the things that are most important to people in a workplace environment. That's actually the highest I've seen. So when you give people a really good chance to think about what's most important, then you can kind of guide them in the right direction. Because again, you don't want to tell them this, but here's some kind of selling points, assuming that this is true for your organization. If people are leaving, they're taking a risk. So they know what they have here at your organization. And it might be good for you to clarify, like, what is it that you really like about our organization? What is it that you think we could improve? And if you're getting a very small list of things they like and a really big list of things that they want to see improved, that's a warning sign, because then it won't take more than a couple dollars an hour to get for somebody to change jobs, because they don't see any risk in leaving. But if you see that somebody communicates all these things they like I like the fact that my manager really helps me grow. It seems like my manager really cares about me. It seems like the organization has a good culture. If they're telling you all these things that they like, then you could just simply ask them, well, I'm going to give you the kind of the facts first, and then you can guide the discussion later. But they're taking on a pretty big risk if they leave, because maybe they make a few, let's just say it's 5-10% more than what they're making now. That sounds great in theory, right? But if they end up in a place where they're miserable every day, that is not worth any amount of money. And you don't know what you're getting until you go into a company. I mean, they can tell you whatever they want in an interview process, and they might show you around, and it might look great, but you truly don't know until you've been there, unless you have a bunch of friends that work there and they've all told you how great it is, or some people you trust telling you that have been there for a while. So, they're taking a big risk is one thing. So that's one way you can kind of guide the discussion. You ask people what they like about where they're at, um, what they what they would like to improve about where they're at now. And as long as it's overall positive, it sounds like they do really like the work environment. You just ask them, have you thought about what it might be like in that culture? What happens if it's really toxic and you hate coming into work every day because you don't like the people you work with, you don't like your boss. Um, you know, that's a possibility, guiding the discussion in that way. The other thing you can do is to ask people, um, like, so let's say that they're considering leaving for a little bit of extra money. Um, I would imagine that most of your people are on some type of performance-based pay. And with performance-based, there's an advantage to that, which is, maybe you could talk about, well, what are some ways I can help you hit your monetary goals by hitting certain numbers? What if we could get you the same money here, or close to it, without taking the risk of having to go someplace where you don't know what you're going to get? And one last thing is to really, if you're asking people about like, hey, what's most important to you in a work environment, to kind of get an understanding of, I feel fairly confident they're going to tell you at least 5 things that are just as important or more important than pay, if they really think about it. And then if they do list those things out, to say, well, how can we come up with a plan together to help make sure that we're hitting all 5 of these things that you mentioned that are really important to you? I want to help make sure that these are all being met on a consistent basis. So those are some of the specifics. Kind of zooming back out, again, the high level idea here is that you don't want to try to sell your organization to the person and try to convince them to stay. What you want to do is serve as a coach who's understanding what is their motivation for leaving if they're thinking about leaving. What are all the factors going into the decision? And I mean, at the risk, not that I would ever consider your employees to be children, obviously, but you might want to act as a parent. A good parent says, look, as long as a decision is not going to hurt their child, they say, look, this is your decision. I'm going to let you make it. But let's sit down and let's think about all the different elements that go into it and make sure we're not missing anything. I want to help you make the best decision for you. And, it could be that if you have a really good, candid conversation with this person, the best decision for them might be to leave. And that's okay. If that's the case, then you and the leadership team need to get together and say, well, why is it that they're leaving? And what is it that we can do to improve what we're doing to make sure that people's needs are met here going forward, even though it might be too late to help that particular person. How can we help prevent this from happening in the future? But my hope is you've all been working very hard at building a good team culture on your teams, and that's really what creates a good company culture, is a collection of teams that have strong team cultures. And if you're really doing that work, my hope is that if you have a good conversation with somebody and you really approach it as a coach, you're trying to help them make the best decision. The best decision will be that they stay, even if it's for a little bit less pay. Particularly if you can help them see how they could be making that much money in the near future. It might not be in the next 90 days, but they could do that if it's performance based. And then everybody wins.